So the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to covering a company is just right from scratch. Where I begin is creating a company page. And so if I'm, on this day, I might say like started covering, and usually what I'll do for a public company is I'll have the company name and then the ticker. So I create a new page and I might say I'm going to cover Uber, and then in parentheses, I'm going to put the ticker there. That just helps me keep public and private companies separate. So maybe I'm going to start covering Uber. And so this is right from scratch. My first page. Whenever I start a new company and start spending a lot of time researching it, I'll throw open this resource that I have called an investment memo template that I've pulled into Roam. And the way I do it is a little bit different than you might normally do with what I showed on the last video with templates. So I pull open the memo template and I pop this out. Let's just go take a look at it really quickly. So this is basically my own personal creation of all things that you might find in an investment memo. So different questions, and it's a little bit more color on how to think about this, like how to answer this question, what should go in this section, all this stuff. But I don't want all of this. Like this is like from my own learning and thinking, but it doesn't need to be I don't need it in my memo. So what I'll do is and you could do something, right? Like I do have it, if you'll see this, I have it as a template. So anywhere you put that hashtag Roam/templates, remember it's the master page is the title of the template, and everything underneath is going to be the template. But the main problem with doing it that way is if I do that, it comes up, and so you see a couple of templates that I have, and I popped open my memo template because I like these sections in there for my own education, but it's going to pull everything in. And so each time I'd have to manually go in and delete all of these sections. And so I don't like to do that for that reason. And there's another reason that I'll explain in a second. So basically what I like to do instead is I will shift click the memo template and I will highlight all of the sections. So not like the credits and the tags and things, but I'll come all the way down to the bottom. And so I've got all of these sections highlighted. And if you hold down Command and hover over the very first bullet or the first block, and you click and drag and then let go of Command, you see how now I'm pulling in block references. And so see how if I hover this and I move it back and forth, you can see, do I want to line it up or so it's on the same level, or do I want it to be nested underneath that above block? So I like to put it just right there. And what that's done, you can see over here, it's basically pulled in this block into this page. And the reason that I prefer to do it that way is so that if I'm, let's say, I'm going through and maybe on competition, I am thinking about Uber's competition, and maybe I'm thinking about, how maybe it's a 2-horse race with a focus on market share and profitable business lines, something like that. So I'm writing about that competition, right? So later, if I'm going into my memo template and I'm thinking, what have I thought about competition across the companies that I've looked at? And I come down here to my competition section. I have a few questions that might help me think about competition, but I can also pop open the block reference. And you can see, with Uber, I thought about how, it's a 2-horse race, right? There's different references and things. If I had done it on several companies, you can start to see, I could look at my perspective on competition across companies because I've block referenced that. So when you use a template, it wouldn't necessarily do the exact same thing as easily. So I just like how clean it can be by block referencing in all the sections, and then I answer them as I go. So that is, let's just jump back and make sure I'm covering everything. So that's basically creating a page, right? So creating a page as a guide. The two things that I might then pull into a company, number one is this idea of a daily sentiment. So I'll come in here and you can actually nest page, one page name in another page name. So if I say I want to pull in the Uber name, and then I want to say this is my daily sentiment page, I can actually highlight that entire thing that includes a page and basically double page it. And so now this has created another page where it's not only referencing my Uber page, but it's also isolating it down to just my daily sentiment page. And the reason that I like this is, let's say over time, every day, and I'll come back to this a little bit more in terms of like how I ingest information and things. But if on certain days I might come in here and I might pull in my daily sentiment page, and I read a tweet about the focus on M&A at, maybe I'm not covering this company yet, so I won't worry about setting it up all right, but maybe covering it at Expedia, how that impacts Uber, and maybe I'll link to the tweet or whatever, right? I'm not really like researching per se, like I'm just making a small observation. And it's thinking, oh, that's interesting. You know, that comes up over and over again. And then maybe later on, I have another thought about Uber and got a text from a friend about how hard it is to find Uber in New York City post-COVID or something. I don't know if that's true or not, but you see how you're just like making these small observations throughout the day, right? So on your Uber page, in addition to like what hopefully is substantive research that you're doing on different areas of the business and things like that, you can also shift click, pop that bad boy open and just throw open your references. And you can start to see, in addition to just this main page, you can see on February 10th, this was my observation. On January 29th, this was my observation. So you start to build this just a little bit more of a casual collection of thoughts around the business that don't get muddied up with a bunch of random stuff in your core section. I kind of try and keep this fairly clean so that if I wanted to, I could send this entire database to somebody and it would be, you know, fairly clean and decently thought out and things like that. So let people come up to speed. So that's one piece, is this daily sentiment idea. And then the other thing that I will often pull in is I have these frameworks. So I have this investment frameworks page. So I can pull that open. And then again, I can either shift click or control shift O and throw open my investment frameworks page. And basically, this is another resource. And both of these resources, by the way, the memos and the frameworks, there's a link in this article. You can get to this Investing 101 2.0 Roam graph. And I have these templates right here for you that you can download into your own Roam database and reference. But this is basically a ton of different checklists and frameworks that people use to be able to evaluate businesses. And some of them, you know, might have some commonalities. How efficient is the company? You know, any outstanding issues, whatever. But you can start to collect your own frameworks as well. But maybe there's something where like you have the effectiveness of an online marketplace. And so one cool thing about this is you can snag this, right? And you can see that I've done this before. But maybe I go in here and I highlight again, similar to what I did. I might, actually I think I might have to do it in 2 steps. But so I can come down here and I can say, okay, the first framework that I want is I want to block reference this Bill Gurley marketplace thing, highlight all of the pieces of the marketplace, throw those in. And again, if I wanted them on the same block, I could hold them over. I'm going to put them right there. Then what I can do is I can say, okay, new experience versus the status quo. Evolutionary. Something like that. So, you know, I have this framework, right? But then the cool thing is I can jump into my my investment frameworks page, my Bill Gurley framework. Might have this new experience versus the status quo, open up the block references. And again, I can see, oh, on Airbnb, here's what I thought about this specific new experience versus status quo. With Uber, here's what I thought. You can start to see that build up across businesses, which is one of the most important reasons why I use things this way, to be able to make those references. So that's pulling in frameworks. And then we'll come back to this more when I talk about information ingestion and things. But one of the things that I will do as well is if I have a conversation with somebody. So again, you'll remember that if I'm having general conversations, you know, maybe I had a call with, maybe we'll talk about Uber and I can make some comments, right? So really the only place that shows up, if I click in here, you can see like it's not really coming into my memo. It's just going to show up down here. And so I can see like, okay, it's seeing all my daily sentiments. It's seeing that on this day I started covering Uber and here's the conversation that I had. Like, but rather than having to review a bunch of things in here by putting them in my daily page, one of the things, and that's fine if I have like, maybe this conversation isn't about Uber. Uber just happens to be one of the things that we talk about. Then I'm fine doing that kind of thing. But if I have a conversation with somebody specifically about a company, so let's say like I have, you know, you have a call, and maybe you even want to do if you wanted to, you could break out, calls and meetings or whatever. And maybe you want to add that to your memo template, right? But I'll often put calls and meetings and articles and things in here. So maybe I had a call with Goldman Sachs about Uber, and I want to say that it was today. So I'll do /today. That way I know what the date was that I had that conversation, right? And then notes from the conversation. So I might do that. I may also read, if I have something that I read. So this seems like an interesting, I'm reading this article. I'm gonna snag that. And again, I'll come back to like how I think about some of this stuff, but maybe I read, I'll grab the title of the article. And maybe I don't want to make it its own separate page. Maybe I just want to snag that, the hyperlink. Okay. And then I want to take notes on that. So I start to collect all of my calls and articles that I've read and things like that down here in the resources page. So I often will do that in here if it's very specific research for the company. If I'm just reading things in general and they happen to reference it, then I'll just reference it in the conversation or whatever it might be, and it will just come up. So that is a high-level introduction to like the way that I think about building a company page, tracking a company over time, kind of digging in on research.